Update: am I the butthole for trying to send my deaf daughter to a school that won't hire an interpreter? Thank you all for your advice on my last post. I wasn't aware of all the laws about this kind of thing. For those of you who didn't read the original poster, basically my 6-year-old daughter is deaf and communicates using ASL. There is a public school near us, but it's very bad and the whole district has a rating of 1.5 stars. All of our other children go to a private school near us. But the private school said they wouldn't pay for an interpreter because there is a deaf school in our county, but the deaf school only teaches speech and no sign language, so we decided not to send her there. We also wanted her to go to the private school because there was a language option for ASL, so she may be able to communicate with other classmates. But my brother said that we shouldn't push trying to get her in. If the school doesn't want her, we should just give up. Most people said to hire a lawyer. My husband decided to contact his brother, who is a disability lawyer. Although he specializes in wheelchair accessibility, he was willing to take our case. We discussed the situation over the phone with him, and then he reached out to the private school. He emailed back and forth with the school. We're not sure what was said exactly, but by the end of it, not only did the school agree to pay for the interpreter, but they also provided a free scholarship and let us request which teacher she had, which they didn't let us do for any of our other kids. There is a kindergarten teacher who knows some ASL, so we chose to be in her class. I'm not sure exactly why they did this, but I think it's probably because denying entry to a kindergartner just because she's deaf would not look so good if other people found out. But I'm not complaining. She started 2 weeks ago and she loves it. They are doing hybrid. She is able to make friends and talk to other kids, though in kind of broken sign language. Her interpreter is very nice and will update us on how she did every day, unlike the interpreter she had when she was in public school. Her teacher also tried to sign when she's speaking as much as possible, and so do some of the kids. Overall, I'm so happy this happened, and I wouldn't have known there was anything I could do about it until I asked on here. So thank all of you who replied to the original poster and told me they do have to provide an interpreter for her. Edit: my pronouns are she/her. I'm not sure why everyone's referring to me as a male, but just wanted to let you all know. Edit 2: to everyone concerned as to why my Bill is a disability lawyer, but I came to Reddit first. We barely talked to Bill. He's my husband's half-brother and there is a 16-year age gap, so they aren't close. And at the time when I first posted, I didn't think I could do anything legally. I talked about why in the comments, so I didn't even think of talking to my Bill. I was just concerned if I was being too pushy, which is why I came to this sub rather than legal advice. Hope that clears some things up. Good job on following through and working for your daughter. I'm not sure where you are, but rest assured that school is going to get their scholarship money back through government grants and tax breaks. It makes me happy to know private schools are being expected to meet the same basic standards as public schools, especially when so much money is being funneled away from the public for the private schools, at least in the USA. Plus, this is a win-win for everyone. The other students get to learn in real life how sign language can make a difference for someone and practice it. My best friend in elementary school was deaf, so our whole class learned ASL. 80s kids, I have continued to use it as much as possible since, from teaching my kids to communicate before they could talk, to communication with my deaf and HO customers and friends. My best friend's cousin, who I didn't really see regularly, is deaf, and I learned tons of ASL that I have used here and there. It's a wonderful skill and an asset. Plus, it let you communicate quietly without disrupting the class. Learned ASL when I entered 4th grade, taught another person, and got in trouble for talking in class. This made me laugh so hard. Kids will always find a way to push the rules. I love it, lol. It is, especially when the teacher back is turned and you want to talk. Oh yes. Finger spelling was all the rage when I was in middle school, and no, nobody at our school was HO as far as I knew. I think a couple of students started it so they could talk in code in class, and suddenly everyone had to be in on it. The poor teachers. Same here, but in college. My college has a lot of deaf, hard of hearing folks, so you learn a ton of sign. I got in trouble for calling my friend a piss boy and saying your dad lesbian to him. This is so inspiring. I wanted to learn ASL partially because of curiosity and partially because I got an injury to my jaw that won't heal and sometimes affects me talking. My mom and I thought ASL would be a great way for me to communicate during flare-ups, among a host of other reasons, and were quite excited until the bubble was burst by my ex, who was pissed that he would have to learn it too in that case. But he was kicked to the curb a long time ago, so tomorrow I'm starting ASL. Yes. Same. I learned because I'm hard of hearing and worried about losing more hearing in the future, but damn if I haven't used it the most during TMJ flare-ups. My partner and my sister are the only ones I can use it with, but God, it's nice not having to force out some kind of mumble and make the pain worse just to ask for help. Good riddance to that whiny, lazy baby of an ex. Hello to new skill. I've always wanted to learn. I had a little in elementary school, mostly just letters and some basic phrases, but alas, it's been lost to the sands of time. Maybe I should start learning again too. We taught our kids baby sign language before they could speak, and we still use it with them. They're 4 and 10. It's pretty handy. My mom did this with my younger brothers, and I also did it with my son. It's so useful for preventing tantrums when they can't put into words what they need. I did this with my daughter, and my sister followed suit. She was communicating at 6 months. More, eat, drink, please, sleep, mom. My nieces and nephews were difficult to understand when they spoke, so sign really helped. One nephew had a 100-word vocabulary. Really helped the nephew that was partially deaf until he got ear tubes at 4. This would have been so useful when I was a baby. I was a super late speaker because of auditory processing issues, and I'm definitely planning to do signing when I have kids. My kids are 14 and 19. Lol, I do a lot of signing after dealing with them. And drinking, teenagers, they can make you crazy. Feel that. My daughter is 10 going on 20. She's able to irritate me in unique ways. I had a deaf classmate in 3rd and 4th grade in the early 90s. Her interpreter really stepped up and worked with the whole class to make sure she was included. We all learned the Pledge of Allegiance in ASL and recited it both out loud and in sign every morning. We learned the alphabet and numbers, and every week we learned our spelling words in ASL. Really good experience for all of us. I learned Spanish this way in 3rd and 4th grade. Simple phrases, but I remember them to this day. I ended up taking Spanish in high school to continue that education. I learned Spanish because my best friend, forever, was a Cuban refugee. My accent is awful. How lovely. I went to a school for kindergarten for a few months, where a kid was deaf and spoke sign with an interpreter. I learned the ASL alphabet so I could talk to him better. I moved schools shortly after though, but still knew the ASL alphabet by the time I took a class on it in college. It also looks great on a resume too. Right? That was my thought. This is added value for the kids around her, since this is a marketable job skill in the future. I wish my children could have access to ASL lessons at a young age to learn how to speak at least a bit with deaf people when needed. That would be a wonderful and useful life skill. You can make it happen, and might as well learn yourself. Google Learn ASL, I am sure there are videos and blogs. Good luck. Yup. We had 2 deaf students in my class when I was a teenager, so we all learned some basic BSL, British Sign Language, so we could communicate together. 18 years later I still have the BSL alphabet memorized, and I want to relearn more. But can we also give a huge shout out to the brother-in-law for his work here? I know this is what lawyers do, and as an uncle I'm sure he wanted to do all he can to help, but this has undoubtedly changed this young girl's life and education opportunities. Congratulations on the outcome, Op. I am not sure why you think private schools funnel money away from public. My son is special needs and has attended both public and private schools in elementary. Even if you attend private school, you still have to pay all the taxes to support public schools. Because of this, any student attending private school is eligible for any public school programs, even if they do not attend. This includes sign language interpreters. Also, private schools absolutely do have to accommodate just like any public school would. So the funneling of funds happens because of count day. Each school, here in my part of the US anyway, has count day in September. They count how many kids are in each school in each grade. Based on those numbers, schools receive their share of funding. Number of classrooms are decided. We frequently lose teachers because of this. They think 35 plus kids to a classroom is just fine. And more importantly, Title I funding, funds granted based on number of low-income students, are decided. If a low-income kid is removed and put in private school, or a charter school, a school can lose out on that funding as well. So while a district gets funded based on property taxes, regardless of whether they have a kid attending or not, or at all, funds are divided up by the actual makeup of the school. The push in some areas, they exist in 18 states/areas already I believe, for people to have vouchers that give the tax dollars to private schools is a more direct harm of funneling of funds. Ultimately, school funding is a train wreck that no one seems to know or want to fix. And then, in my part of the country, after our count day, also referred to as Third Friday because it's held on the third Friday in September, many of the private and charter schools will suddenly say that they can, A, no longer have the child at their school because of behavior issues. B, no longer have the child at school because they can no longer provide special education services for their child. Because public schools have to provide a free, public, education, many of these students return to public school after being dismissed from their first school. Because of the way that funding is set up, if the child leaves after Third Friday, the first school gets to keep all of the funding attached to that child, while the public school won't receive any extra funding. Bingo. Happens here too in the exact same way. How in the F is this allowed? I know, right? It's bonkers. In my opinion, we need to overhaul how we fund education. Where I am, it's because we have public vouchers. Parents get money from the state, if they meet certain requirements, to choose to send their child to a private school. The private schools don't necessarily have to provide a free public education, like your local public school, who has to take everyone regardless of the situation, so they can basically take the money and run. Now, that doesn't mean that all schools will do this. Many private schools do a great job of doing things the right way. But there are schools who try to lure parents away from public schools with technology lures, promises of small class sizes, offering raffle prizes for families who enroll, and then pull this BS because the way we fund our schools is fundamentally flawed. Because the public schools lose their per pupil funding from the state per student that would be attending that school. It's usually thousands of dollars per student. I think original poster is thinking of public charter schools. Funds funneling. As another commenter stated, there is count day in September and the funds are divided based upon pupil count. What happens in our area is after the count is completed, those same private and parochial schools receive the funds for them and they weed out the less desirable students. The weeded out students then re-enroll into the public school, but private school gets to keep the funds allotted to those students. Therefore, the public school has to educate those students minus their allotted funds. It happens all the time. Private schools might not have to have licensed teachers, but at least they have to follow some discrimination laws. The private schools in our area get around this by sending all of their students with special needs to our public school. I'm not sure why that's okay, but the private school kids come to our school for speech, SPED, OT, etc., and the public school district picks up the bill. They might make the money back from public schools. AITA is designed to improve educational results for all children with disabilities. Therefore, it provides benefits and services to children with disabilities in public schools and requires school districts to make services and benefits available to children with disabilities enrolled by their parents in non-public, private, schools. Web link. I love reading about a child doing well. I imagine she'll have a class full of kids who learn ASL, which is great for all of them. She may have plenty of fights in her life to get what she needs, and you are showing her that she is worth the fight. Seriously, this made my morning. I didn't even read the post this update is for, but I am so relieved for this little girl and her parents. Yes, this was a great outcome. The only weird thing was Op's brother-in-law happens to be a disability lawyer, and then they only decided to ask him after people mentioned getting a lawyer, and he does wheelchair accessibility cases but decided he'd help here. What? Maybe they aren't close? I don't know. Seems like something they would have already looked into, but if it's not something the family talks about, who would bring it up? A lot of people don't do work for family. NTA. You're not a butthole for strong-arming this school into the current century. The only reason that children with disabilities have any accommodations afforded to them in school is because of parents like you. Parents of special needs children have to push for their kids, because no one else will. You did the right thing. Not only for your kid, but for future kids who will want to attend that school and need an interpreter. I love this comment. But I also want to point out that the passage of legislation ensuring civil rights for disabled people in the US was accomplished largely through the direct actions and sacrifices of disabled people themselves. Not at all trying to diminish the role of parents, at all. But technically, the legal framework that requires the school to comply is the result of a long hard struggle of disabled people for rights that is often forgotten in US history. On mobile, so linking is hard, but the Netflix documentary Crip Camp does a great job of detailing this. Again, love your comment, just wanted to provide some clarification. You're a badass, lovely parent. Even if she doesn't understand the legal and money stuff till she's older, it will mean the world to her that her parents fought to get her the education she deserves. Haha, thank you. The AITA and other protections were won by disabled and/or deaf adults largely. People who are interested in our history should look up the Capitol Crawl and Deaf President Now as starting points. The documentary Through Deaf Eyes is free on YouTube and is a great intro to deaf culture and activism as well. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube and share them with your friends. We welcome your comments below. Press to start another of our videos.